This episode is brought to you by our great sponsors. If you need to buy a domain, look no further than hover.com. With hundreds of domain extensions, no heavy-handed upselling, and best-in-class support, Hover makes it easy to spend less time on your domains and more time on your big idea. I use Hover for all of my domains, and I couldn't be happier with the process from start to finish. And now, you can use the offer code BUILDSOMETHING for 10% off your first purchase. That's BUILDSOMETHING, all one word, no spaces. Head over to buildpodcast.net/hover today. That's buildpodcast.net/hover. Project Panorama is a WordPress project management plugin that visually communicates project progress to your clients and team. At a glance, your clients can see exactly how close the project is to completion, what has been done, and what will be done next. Panorama is meticulously designed to impress your clients and save you time, allowing you to bill more. Check it out at buildpodcast.net/PM. And for a limited time, you can use the offer code HowIBuiltIt for 20% off. That's How I Built It, all one word, for 20% off. And now, on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of How I Built It, the podcast that asks, how did you build that? Today, I am honored to have my good friend and awesome dude all around, Dre Armeda. Dre, how you doing today?
What's going on, my man? Great to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for being on the show. We are going to talk about Sucuri, and how you kind of built up a company that focuses on not just WordPress security, right, but general online security.
Absolutely. Awesome. Sounds
Cool.
good, man.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and Sucuri and how you came up with the idea?
Sure. So, well, like you said, my name's Dre Armeda. Actually, I spent a long time in the late 90s and the early 2000s working through security while I was in the military, and different aspects of security, right? So the physical security domain, InfoSec, crypto, the whole nine. But really, the idea for Sucuri came well after that. But ultimately, at the beginning stages of my Navy career, I got involved with the internet, and it was almost by accident, really. My chief warrant officer at a squadron I was in, VFA 147, had said, "Hey, look, you're the resident geek here. You do all of our networking stuff." It was Windows NT, Windows 2000 mixed mode network of about 220 computers, laptops, and such. And as a deployable unit, we'd have to take that whole network down and bring it back up on board the ship in integrated with their network. In any event, he said, "Hey, look, you're the resident geek. We need an intranet site." This is like 1999 or so. And he goes, here's our Adobe Photoshop 4.5 and Microsoft front page. You got 2 weeks to get this rocked out. So I went and started reading some stuff. I figured it out. Some really terrible CSS within HTML using, front page and a bunch of rollover images, no sprites, no nothing, man. It was crazy, but we got it done. So that was kind of my introduction to web stuff. And this is again 99. Got excited about it and kind of moved on from there, really doing a lot of design stuff, front end UI things. Really got excited about designing stuff. But means to an end was finding a way to showcase all this work online. And so in 2004 or so, by then I was working, my portfolio site was like, HTML with a bunch of iframes and all this crap for all my portfolio items and news and stuff. So I figured out I needed a more intuitive way to kind of manage these things. So I found WordPress in about 2004, created my first theme end of 2004, 2005. So it wasn't too long after the project had kicked off. But all the while, I was in the military and I was doing a lot about InfoSec stuff. So in 07, actually, I got out of the military and I went and worked for an InfoSec company in the Chicagoland area. Great experience there. They got acquired, and eventually I made my way back to California. But some of the relationships that I built there, especially one with Daniel Sid, who was the founder of OSEC HIDS, a host intrusion detection system that was open source, and that the company I was working for was trying to figure out a way to integrate into their network solution to be able to manage InfoSec at the network level. Well, I had left that company, obviously, and Daniel was working at Trend Micro at the time while he was doing this project, and we kept in touch. And one of the things he was thinking about was like, look, if we can look at the integrity of portions of a network using something like a host intrusion detection system, why couldn't we remotely do that for websites? And I said, that's an interesting question. And at the time, I had all my websites and stuff going up, and there was a lot of the internet was blowing up. Open source content management systems were kind of in that fight to see who was going to gain mass space and stuff. I had chosen WordPress there at the time, and it was an interesting place. So we set out to kind of figure out how to do that. And sure as hell, man, Dana's a genius, right? So he figured out a way to kind of tune definitions and remotely check the output and the behavior of a website to see if it had any matches to, known exploits or known issues, right? So things like outages, things like, defacements, server errors. We were able to catalog these things with signatures and definitions and push a response to the end user saying, hey, look, we've met matches to this. Something's not right. You need to take action. And that's kind of the initial to market with Sucuri. And we were betaing 2008, 2009, and we had already kind of sold a few in service plans, but the company became a company in roughly February 2010. And at the time, poor Daniel, in his beautiful design skills. I mean, this guy's a guy you put in a dungeon with a green screen, right? Like, and he'll code like the next big thing for sure. But his design skills weren't amazing, and that was really where I came into play. I was more always the front in terms of helping engage the audience, bring the product to market, the marketing side of it, and business development, things of that nature. So with his back-end capabilities is his development genius, and then my ability to kind of put a face to it in terms of the front end and so on. We launched in February of 2010. Now, that was the initial stages, and we quickly saw that, wow, this is crazy. We were still working, full time at our regular jobs, but there was a couple big exploits that happened that year. One notable one, it's actually still a Wikipedia around GoDaddy and some infrastructure issues that they have where, there was lateral movement, not just across a shared environment. So for example, you've got 50 shared sites on one, or 50 sites on one shared hosting account. Now we're talking, they were moving across multiple hosting accounts, right? So it was like a big deal. Wow. So what we found though, is us alerting to these issues was not very actionable. Right? It's very reactive, and we're saying, hey, you've got a problem, but then what? Like, what does the end user do? So we instituted an incident response process that we developed and said, look, this is how we're going to help folks. We're going to make this actionable. We're going to be able to not only alert them that there's an issue, or if someone has an issue, they can come to us and we can come in and remediate these problems. And that's really where things shook up, man. In 2010, I mean, we got to the point where we were cleaning hundreds of websites a day, and it was really just Daniel and I initially. And then what we saw was like, wow, we're having a hard time not understanding really the business side of things or how to really manage this growth. We need someone that can help us kind of operationally come in and really help shape this into something that if we decide we want to do it full time, we have a means to do that. So that's where Tony Perez, who's now our CEO, came into play. So it was really the three of us throughout the rest of 2010, and it was growing, right? So like month over month, everything was moving in terms of like the business side financially and such. And we were seeing so many people targeted and so many issues that we got up to a point like by the beginning of 2011 where, I mean, we were literally all of us cleaning up hundreds of websites a day, just through the remediation process. So we brought in another person to help initially just part-time, doing the incident response stuff. And it actually, the week before WordCamp San Diego 2011, I was employee number one. So I went full time. We said, look, we've sustained this growth for a matter of time now. We've got the financial backing to make this happen, where I'm not taking such a huge, pay cut where my quality of living changes. We think we could do it. Let's try this out for 6 months and see what happens. And then by the end of 2011, Daniel, myself, and Tony were full time. So that was kind of the initial stages. And again, we saw that the alerting and the monitoring piece was super interesting and was helpful, but it was only remote. So you're only seeing the output of that website, right? There's conditional things that make that, not 100% accurate. And the reality is remote monitoring can't detect everything. It's not seeing all the files that aren't served on every page pull request, right? So the only real way to kind of get a more holistic view of what's going on with your site is to do remote and server side scanning. So, that was one of the adaptations we made along the way to give people a more granular look as to what was going on with a higher level of accuracy. Still reactive though, right? This is going to tell you when something has already occurred. So we went, well, what if we are able to thwart this activity, this traffic before it ever reaches the environment? And around that time frame, we set out to build exactly that. So a perimeter defense that is more proactive. It's something that we're now putting in front of a site, in between the site and the internet, or where these commands, these requests are coming in, this malicious traffic is coming in, and we're giving you the ability to stop it before it ever hit the environment. And that was the advent of our firewall product, which Cloud Proxy was the initial name, but the Sucuri website firewall, which today is alive and kicking and growing, and we've built the whole infrastructure and network around being able to grow that. So that's, at a high level, that's the three products that we really offer, and how it initially started, and how we grew into thinking, look, we need to be a little bit more proactive. We need people to be more proactive about their security.
Nice. And that's great. We have like kind of the whole history of the company here. And so now you've got three products, reactive and then kind of preventative. So in this next question, usually I like to ask what research was done before the company was founded. But in this case, I'd actually like to kind of pivot that question and ask, what kind of research do you and your company do regularly to stay on top of vulnerabilities and kind of new threats that are coming out? Like what does that kind of look like for you?
It's a really interesting question, and a very broad question, right? Because there's so many moving parts to that. So for example, there's places out there that, hey, are disclosing 0 days. They're disclosing, vulnerabilities that have been found, that have been disclosed and have been targeted in some cases. Some cases, maybe not so much, it depends on the severity, but we're able to take those sources along, validate them certainly. But what we've done is we've built a whole research team that just does this all day long. They are looking for new issues that have stemmed up, so we can catalog them, we can test them, make sure that they're legitimate. And if they are, what we've done is we've built a model within our firewall network where we're able to tune that based on these new issues. And what it does for the entire client base is gives us the opportunity to block these things at the edge. So for example, latest version of WordPress, a vulnerability is discovered. Okay. Let's say it's pretty big, and let's say you've got privilege escalation or something like that, right? And we know that these are going to be targeted. There's going to be automated attacks against these things. So what we'll do is we'll put it into our firewall where we block this at the edge. So it's almost like a virtual patching. And although we're very strong on the stance of making sure that you update your software as quickly as possible to mitigate the risk of some type of vulnerability being exploited, it's not always realistic to do that in production, right? And we get that. So what we've done is we've built this in at the edge, so that, hey, all right, this latest version of WordPress and the vulnerability that's being exploited, we stop that at the edge. So now when those requests come in to try to, and again, so 95% of attacks that happen out there today are not targeted. They're opportunistic attacks. They're automated attacks. They're scanning different layers of your stack and figuring out ways to what can I throw over the fence that's going to stick and maybe, infect these folks. So we stop that right at the edge now, right? So we have constant research going on. We have an entire team of researchers that are looking at again, known sources, that testing, potential vulnerabilities. We've discovered some and disclosed them. We've worked, smartly with the folks that, the developers and authors of these, plugins, themes, and so on to help, fix these problems. But it's a constant thing, right? And I think that's where people get maybe a little behind, right? Like, hey, we put a plugin in, on the server and, great, it's going to stop all this stuff. It's not so simple, right? It is a constant changing landscape, and we have put, resources around figuring out what these things are so we can catalog them and get in front of them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? It's almost like you can get vaccinations, but you can't get a vaccine against something you don't know exists yet. So
yeah, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So there's a couple of things that you said that I want to kind of like parse out a little bit more.
Sure.
And the first is that you mentioned that these attacks are opportunistic, right? I think a lot of people, especially if they're like running their own blog or something, they're going to say, well, I'm not big enough to be hacked, right? Nobody's going to go after my data. But that's a bit of a myth. Is that right?
That's 100% a myth, right? Because To be honest, the attackers don't give two hoots. Let's take an example that's maybe relevant right now because of the potential, the huge growth that we're seeing, let's say, in the Internet of all things. Everything's interconnected, right? We're talking about cameras and the DVRs that connect to your security cameras at home, your routers, and the state that they come, right? So I know I'm diverting from the question a little bit, but it shows the severity and why it's important for every single connected device, including websites, to be taken seriously in terms of the security and upkeep of that. These thousands and thousands, millions of devices all over the world that come, in all shapes and forms, from Best Buy to you name it. You buy it on Amazon, got a great deal on that latest, Linksys router, what have you. They all come with default credentials. Okay. They all come in some cases with no credentials, and attackers know this. So what they've done is they've automated attacks to potentially infiltrate as many of these devices across the world as possible. And that in and of itself is not that big a deal. They're not doing too much to let's say, take over your cameras in the sense of, hey, look, we're watching your video, though that is a possibility. Their idea is to gain control of all of those devices in a means to take out the availability of a known target at any given time. So in the instance of your actual device, your website, no, it's certainly not the target, but it is used in the grand scheme of things in a bigger botnet to attack other sites. So what we had with DIN here recently, which is a DNS provider, is that millions of these devices were infiltrated, and then they were pointed to the DIN services to, at a single time, like each one of these devices may be sending out one or two signals or requests to the site, or the service. But what ends up happening when you get millions of those all at the same time is you explode. It's bandwidth, right? So multiple layers on the attack. There was layer 3, layer 4, and layer 7, which are all fundamentally different. I don't think we need to get into it in this show, but ultimately they attacked multiple layers. And what it ended up doing is inundating the service and taking it out. And what ended up happening there is that there was a lot of large services and social platforms like Twitter and such that were using DIN for their DNS. And next thing you know, they're down for 2 days. So stepping this back to the website, think of your website as in the same capacity as one of those routers. The site is vulnerable. Attackers are going to automate attacks to infiltrate those vulnerabilities, to exploit those vulnerabilities. And what they might do is just drop a command and control script on there for the time being. So a backdoor of some sort so they can use the site whenever they want. It's no problem. It doesn't come up infected. It stays like that for a while. But now they want to go do an attack, or they want to do some type of campaign for monetary gain. Maybe that's redirecting your website to a specific pharmaceutical company or pop-ups, what have you, and the click-throughs get the money. Well, then when they're ready to do that, they go ahead and with that command and control capability, they come in and now they drop that malware script in there or what have you to take that over, or to use it to attack another site, like in the case of DIN and the IoT attacks from a month ago. The distributed denial of service as an example. So at the end of the day, these guys and gals don't care, if you're selling cupcakes or if you're making, $1 million in revenue a month with your awesome e-commerce site. At the end of the day, they're looking for the path of least resistance. If it's vulnerable, they're going to try to take control of it. They're going to try to exploit it and go on from there. Again, over 95% of attacks are opportunistic automated attacks. They are not targeted.
Gotcha. I think that was a really great description of a lot of things. I was going to ask you about DIN later. Glad that we covered it now, because that was a big thing that happened a while ago, and it really the entire internet, anything connected to the internet was involved in that. So that's a lot of great information. The other thing I want to ask you about is, and this is, I guess this kind of gets into the question of is how did you build it? You have this firewall, you have a team dedicated to research, and you mentioned 0-day vulnerabilities. Maybe you can talk about kind of how the process of finding and alerting, let's say, a plugin of a vulnerability works, and then how you kind of integrate it into your service, right? Because you don't just find a vulnerability and then tell the internet about it, right? Or at least that's not what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and there's probably a couple different things there, right? So what we've done in terms of the firewall, we also, not only a research team, but we also have a full dedicated, firewall team, which is not just tuning, but helping continue to develop the platform and the network, right? Because there's a lot of moving parts there. It's not just this little piece of software that sits, on a server. I mean, we've got now 6 points of presence, 6 data centers that are strictly the firewall network, right? It's this huge Anycast configuration so that we can, help protect, and also at the same time kind of help websites with their, speed and how they're caching all of their static files, right? So we've built this performance layer into this. So it's a huge team. Now, the one piece, and it's specific to the vulnerability. So let's say we find a plugin that's got a vulnerability. We're going to go and test that out. We want to make sure that we can reproduce that and that we learn everything about that. And we're going to go find out to see if it's been released anywhere. We're going to figure out kind of what's going on there, and twofold. One, to disclose that responsibly with the plugin author. All right, look, you've got some issues here. You need to get this fixed. And there's a whole process built around how that disclosure and stuff happens, how we work with them, requirements for them to make sure that they're patching this and disclosing it efficiently, right? Because it's their responsibility to do so as well. And we've done this quite a bit, even since the beginning days. But at the same time, our research team is working on figuring out ways to stop attacks against that so that we can put it into our network. So they're testing that in our environments to see kind of what the impacts are, how those could be reduced, how we can stop any automated attack from infiltrating the website through our firewall network. And then we push that into our network. The details around the disclosures, they're all a little bit different, but certainly one of the first things we're going to do is go reach out to the author there to figure that out. In the instance of WordPress, it may be different than Joomla or anything else. Again, we're platform agnostic because those processes differ by project.
Gotcha. Cool. So that's again, really interesting stuff. And I guess another aspect of your business, right, besides the preventing and then mitigating hacking or attacks, is that you do a lot of webinars, right? You educate your customers and anybody with these free webinars to kind of take their own measures. Is that right?
We do. Joe, when we started the company, again, it's been 7 years now. And from the beginning, I can count, we've done it over the years, but I can probably count on, back of both hands, how many times we've put out like a real ad or anything like that. Right. Or, and we've started to do some of that stuff, but we've grown, I think, because of, obviously it serves a really strong, focused and needed area. But certainly we have grown because we've helped educate people. We've grown organically. We've grown through our content of being able to empower people to make better decisions around their security. And, I left Sucuri for a couple years, and went back into the agency space. And it was one of in coming back, what's exciting is that premise is still the same, right? Like the whole idea behind us offering security and these services is to really help folks. And I think that, you see that over time. It's been proven that we've had the opportunity to come in and help folks, educate folks, and we've done so. And I think that we've had a large part, I think maybe a hand in maybe shaping, at least in the WordPress space, how people maybe think about their security. And that's due to us coming out there, doing webinars, speaking at events, writing a lot of content at blog.sucuri.net. We've got, years and hundreds and thousands of posts that, really just come in helping educate people about the latest threats, steps, and how-to guides on how to fix things. We put out a bunch of new guides over the last month, as well as some white papers, kind of help people understand, the threatscape out there. We've been putting out a quarterly report now that talks to, different open source platforms and kind of the things that we should be considering, new trends that are up and coming, or old ones that are starting to grow again, because it's this constant shift. But that was, that's always been the idea, right? Is to help educate folks and help them understand the inherent risks that they're dealing with. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an adage about kind of the weakest link in a security chain is the people, right? And that's usually said by like engineers who are like kind of being mean about it. But the way to strengthen that chain is to educate.
It sure is. Yeah.
So maybe with this was kind of a really fast half hour, but we're coming up. We have a few minutes left, and I would love to kind of ask you, in lieu of a trade secret, what are some things that people can do to be more proactive about the security of their website?
Oh, that's a fabulous question. I think that when we start thinking about security, especially let's take WordPress specifically, we start thinking about the next application layer, connector that we can add, right? A plugin. So we put all these plugins into place thinking that it's going to give us this stronger security stance. But in essence, we don't really know that for sure. Sometimes we're actually introducing more insecurities than anything else. These crazy alarms and, warnings and things that are going off. And most of them are unfounded, right? So the idea is to think outside of that, right? One, we need to take a layered security approach to any website that we put up online. So it's great to have application level plugins and such to help kind of figure out the integrity of the files and things that are going on the site, maybe do some hardening and things of that nature. But I think that those need to be, paired with something on the perimeter. So again, a layered security approach. Defense in depth is really what people need to be thinking about. Great, you've got a couple plugins on your site. Now, what are you doing to protect on the edge, right? How are you stopping people from, let's say, reaching your WP admin, right? So that's an interesting thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of little techniques and things that happen there. But I think that the biggest takeaway that I want folks to take from this discussion and this specific question is that it's time for people to start thinking beyond the application. Okay, WordPress alone is not the only attack vector. The attack surface is well bigger than that, right? So let's take it just even to the hosting level. What do you have sitting on your server? Okay, you've got that application, certainly if you're using WordPress, and the plugins, third-party integration points that are sitting there at the application layer. What's under that, right? You've got some type of server-side language or languages, right? Those need to be maintained. You've got some database or multiple databases maybe that need to be protected. And we haven't even gotten to the web servers software yet, right? So that's something to consider. There's multiple areas in the stack that we need to be considering. So while we want to be proactive, I mean, I think we want some type of perimeter firewall, super important, to kind of help stop those attacks. But we want to make sure that we're thinking about the entire stack, not just the platform that we're using to serve our actual web pages. Then let's extend beyond that, right? How are you logging in at home? I mean, is your machine secure? Are we on networks that maybe are not secure, right? So we've got to think well beyond just the platform and do a better job of holistically approaching security as a whole.
Gotcha. That's great advice, right? It sounds like we as a WordPress community, or maybe just websites in general, maybe it's more than just WordPress. We've got the guards inside the castle protecting our castle. Now it's time to think about the moat around the castle, right? Now it's time to think about safely transporting our people from the castle to other places. I think I'm stretching this analogy a little bit, but
I think it's dead on. I mean, to be quite honest.
Awesome, yeah. So, yeah, we need to think kind of beyond our WordPress install, our castle. So, awesome. We didn't talk a whole lot about business, and we're at the end of time. But do you have maybe 30-second business advice that you would give to somebody who wants to start a WordPress company? You've been a part of a couple of big ones now, Sucuri, and then the agency work that you did. So what advice can we give people there to kind of end on?
Build a bridge with partners, right? Like you can try to pick up as many freaking bricks to build it on your own, but obviously having extra hands there is super helpful. The best advice I ever got when I was first starting is don't go at it alone. Find someone that you can trust that complements the things that you're good at, and go at it together. You have a better chance of succeeding together, than going at it alone.
Awesome. That's great. And that's perfect way to end on. Dre, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, my man. And I look forward to seeing you here at WordCamp US. If anybody's I don't even know when this is airing, so you might have to cut this out.
That's all right. This is coming out in January. So, I'm really glad we got to see each other at WordCamp US.
Dude, what a great time seeing you at WordCamp US, man. That cigar was amazing.
Right? Awesome. All right. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to everybody for listening. And until next time, get out there and build something. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to our great guest and fantastic sponsors. If you liked the show, please rate it and subscribe on iTunes, in Google Play, or at Spotify, or whatever your podcast app of choice is. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out at howibuilt.it. And finally, until next week, get out there and build something.